guys for having me on. I
Mhm.
really appreciate you guys having us out here. So, my name is Amanda Masnelli. I am the lead trainer for Domesti-Pups. We are based out of Lincoln, Nebraska. In fact, Delia got her dog from us. So we are a small nonprofit organization that trains dogs for seizure response, balance mobility, and diabetic alert. I have been with the program since 2013 in the service dog side. I did do other things in the program prior to that. So a lot of the things you're going to see tonight, some of them are going to be program-based opinion answers, and some of them are going to be factual answers based on ADA law and some of those things. So we will just kind of get forward and going through kind of each of our processes here. So our mission with Domesti-Pups is for over 20 years, we've been providing improving the quality of life for persons with special needs through the assistance of animals. We do quite a few different things among the realm of animal assisted therapy. We have service dogs, therapy dogs, and we also have an adoptable pet program. But again, tonight you're here to learn more about service dogs. So I thought I would just start out from the get-go of what makes a service dog. There's going to be a lot of questions throughout this. So like I said, you guys can add it to the chat. But in general, service dog is a term that covers a dog. This is under the ADA law, a dog of any breed that is individually trained to perform tasks associated with a disability. The dog is not aggressive or disruptive, and the dog is potty trained. So under ADA law, those are the things that they say qualifies for a service dog. But those of you that have been around a service dog, or those of you that have used a service dog, there is much, much more that goes into a dog being a service dog. So much, much more. We want a dog that can handle many different stressful situations and be able to recover out of those stressful situations, because life happens. There are times we get stressed in public. They need to be able to handle the same thing. We want dogs that are non-reactive. They don't bark, lunge, are not dog aggressive, etc. We prefer a dog that is handler focused versus seeking attention from every other person out in public, because again, especially with epilepsy, you need a dog that is focused on you and not outside of that. We also want dogs that enjoy working. So if can I take a dog and train it to do things and quote unquote make it do things? Sure. But is that going to be enjoyable for the dog? And is that going to be enjoyable for me the lifetime of the dog? No. We want a dog that wants to do the job because they are more than successful. We don't ever force the dog to work if they don't want to do that. We want dogs that have high level of obedience, as well as many other things that we'll cover later on in this presentation. So a service dog can be any breed, male, female. It's not required to be spayed or neutered, suggested, but not required. So there's a lot of different requirements in here. There are also kind of the unspoken rules of those that have service dogs in the service dog community. So for example, they should keep 4 paws on the floor. It's not a written rule anywhere. It's not a law anywhere, but it absolutely should happen. Your dog should not be on furniture in public. Again, all of those things. You want a dog that when you get up and you leave a place, somebody goes, oh my gosh, I didn't even know there was a dog here. So that is truly what you want in a service dog. A service dog should be really seen, not heard, and very, very quiet, non-disruptive. So a lot of the questions in there that I got was, how do I qualify for a service dog? So I will speak somewhat generally on this topic, but then I'm also going to talk about specifically what we do in our program. So I will tell you that every program is going to vary in their regulations for how you qualify in that. Domesti-Pups and ourselves, we don't have a strict set of qualifications to join our program. So what I mean by that is you do have to have a qualifying disability. You have to have epilepsy. You have to have something along those lines to have a qualifying disability to be with our program. But as far as number of seizures or type of seizures, it is really going to depend on how I talk to you. Now, I usually tell people if you are having 1 to 2 seizures a year, a service dog is not going to be as successful for you, because doing it once to twice a year versus doing it several times every month is a very different story. So as an organization, we will look at each and every individual. We also look at needs and wants and some of those things as well. So every program is going to vary. I know for a fact that there's another program that we have worked with previously that requires you to have 1 to 2 seizures a month to get a dog from them. And again, we will take other individuals because seizures are scary. I mean, seizures are terrifying if it's one in a year or if it's one a month. They are terrifying regardless. So we want to be able to help people. We just always like to try to tell people these dogs might not be as successful. We have a dog that was placed in our program. Love him. He is amazing. And the young man went 2 years without having a seizure when he first got his dog. And then 2 years after getting his dog, started having seizures, and the dog was no longer responding to those seizures because he had gone 2 years without having to do it. They practiced, but practicing the seizure didn't look like the real seizure. So the dog was not responding appropriately, and it took additional time after he started having seizures again. So that is something that we always let people know. So again, you have to have a qualifying disability. That's really what comes down to it, a diagnosis of epilepsy. So as far as service dogs that we do in our program, we do seizure response / alert, and we'll go over a little bit more the difference between those, diabetic alert, and balance mobility. Now, I will tell you that all of our dogs are dual trained with balance mobility. We only use large breed dogs. We only use large breed dogs because we, as an organization, want to place the right dog with somebody, not a dog. We are very big on looking at personalities and looking at lifestyle and all of those things and pairing the right dog with the right person, not just any dog that's going to do a job. Because if you're a marathon runner and I give you a dog that wants to lay on the couch all day long, you're not going to be a successful team together. And vice versa. If I give you a crazy hyper dog that needs 4 hours of exercise a day and you're a couch potato, again, you're not going to be successful. So we really take pride in placing the right dog with the individual, not a dog. All of our dogs are trained in mobility assist as well, because as many of you know, after a seizure, sometimes you might need additional help getting up to a couch. You might be a little dizzy, you might be a little unsteady on your feet. So all of our dogs do that. And again, we'll discuss the difference between seizure response and seizure alert here shortly. Another big question that I get asked a lot is owner train versus program dogs. I get a lot of people that say, A, I have a dog, I want to train it, or B, can I give my dog to you to train it? So we're going to dive a little bit into that to talk about the difference between those. So when I refer to it, it'll be owner trained versus program trained dog. So owner training is where the owner provides training to the dog with or without the guidance of a trainer. So under federal law, a person is not required to work with a trainer to get a service dog. There is no national service dog registry. There is no anything. All those things you say online to register your dog as a service dog is truly just a money scam. Under ADA law, anybody that can take and train their dog to become a service dog as long as it meets their criteria. I usually warn people that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right thing to do, but it can be done. I have seen some successful owner trained dogs versus a program dog. A program dog is a dog that is either partially or fully trained when placed with the individual. Again, every program is going to work a little bit differently in how they do things. We only place fully trained service dogs. So the dog is ready the minute that it leaves us to do all the work that it needs to do with you. You have some work to do on your end, but when the dog leaves us, it knows every skill that it needs to do to help with your disability. So what are the benefits of a program dog? There are a lot of them. Truly, I recommend a program trained dog versus training your own dog, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into that. So benefits of a program, it is extremely time saving for an owner. When I'm talking training a service dog, our dogs currently, we utilize a prison system. So our dogs are training for anywhere between 4 and 8 hours per day. They are getting solid training with their inmate handlers. I usually tell people in order to train a service dog the way that they need to be, you need to be able to put in several hours of training a day. So I usually ask people if they're interested in doing owner training, do you have that time? The other thing is health testing is completed prior to getting a dog. Any service dog, and this is more of an opinion based, so please know that, dogs should be health tested prior to going out in public. Dogs should be health tested prior to being trained as a service dog. Training a service dog, whether you do the owner train route or you get a program dog, is a very expensive, time-consuming process. So if you get a dog that has hip dysplasia, for example, that will drastically limit your dog's working life So you have just spent a lot of time, effort, energy, and money for your dog only to be able to work for 2 years because it's going to form arthritis versus having a long working life for a long time. So we as a program, we take that, we do all of that health testing, and the dogs are career changed in our program if they do not pass that health testing. The dogs also have a known temperament and skill set. Not every dog is created equal, and this is really a big thing. A lot of people say, well, I have a dog, can I get it trained? Just because you have a dog does not mean that your dog is going to do well in that regard. We have dogs within our program. In fact, I have one right now that I am 100% confident in saying this is not a seizure response dog. I won't place him as a seizure dog because he doesn't have the want to get up and go. He's kind of like, okay, I'll do it, but he's going to do it in his own time. And with seizures, especially, we want a dog that's up and ready to go and wants to do the job. So when we place a dog with it, the dog has a known temperament and skill set. And again, the risk of having to career change the dog and start over. So what are some of the benefits of owner training? There are some. Owner training can be less expensive. I say can be because it might not be less expensive if you have to start over 3 separate times because the dog doesn't work out. So there are times it can be less expensive. You can also pick a desired breed, etc. Our program, we actually tell you nothing about the dog until the day you get the dog. Because if I tell you are going to get a black lab named Phoebe, and then Phoebe breaks her leg and can no longer be a service dog, I have now just given you attachment to this dog that I'm not going to give you. So we tell you nothing about the dog in advance. You get to learn about the dog as soon as you get that. And it's because we do a lot of placing individuals based on their needs and based on what the skill set of the dog is. And sometimes we don't know that until several months before placement, who is right for what person. The cost is spread out versus one big cost. Usually with owner training a service dog, you are taking care of all those little costs like vet bills and whatever. However, I will tell you that adds up quite as easily as well. And then it also gives you that learning ability to train in that skill set. But there are a lot of negatives to owner training. So picking a quality dog for doing service work can be very challenging. You can't just take any dog out of a shelter and train it to do service work. I have a step parent that is a police officer, and he works at a university. And he called me one day because somebody had a seizure dog, and this individual had a seizure, and the dog was barking, growling, and lunging at officers as they were trying to assist this young man that had had a seizure. The dog was scared. The dog wasn't aggressive, but the dog was terrified in that moment. This was a dog that was rescued from the shelter, and a program that wanted to profit off of them turned around and sold this dog to them. Had to be a dog that can do the job and has the temperament to do the job, and that's not easy to find. I will tell you, as an organization, it's not easy to find to try to do that. It takes hundreds of hours of dedicated training time. Most of these dogs are going through anywhere between 150 and 300 hours of dedicated training time in order to be finished as a service dog. So if you don't have that time, that's definitely a big downside. You also have the risk of washing due to health or behavior. Now, the biggest problem with this is you get this puppy, and this puppy is adorable and you love it. And this puppy at a year old starts limping and it has bad hips. Well, you have just spent 1 year bonding and loving and putting expectations on this dog that you now have to start over with. So that can be a huge negative side with owner training, is that you're going through that process. With a program dog, we take that away. We go through that process so the people don't have to. And then again, potentially more expensive depending on if you have to start over your process more than once. Again, every situation is going to vary. So how do I get started? I'm not going to really talk about the owner train side a lot. I kind of covered that, but truly, especially with epilepsy, I personally believe that you are going to get a better dog if you do an owner train or if you do a program dog. I'm not saying that there aren't people that are out there that are successful with owner train dog. I have seen several of them. It's just a lot of people, when you are focusing on a seizure, In that moment, you are not focusing on the dog training, you are focusing on helping your loved one that has a seizure. So having a dog that is fully trained, ready to go is a lot easier, again, in my opinion. So with a program, how do you get started? The step number one is having a service dog is not easy. We usually say that a service dog is another tool in the toolbox. A service dog is not the only tool. And I'm sure Delia and Christine could talk more about this, but having a service dog is a lot of work. You have to put in so much work, not only to upkeeping the training, you have to practice things. If your dog is not being successful with one part, you have to put in a lot of time for training it. If your dog starts showing negative behaviors and barking, you have to put in the time to fix that problem. So it is not easy, and you have to be dedicated to the process. You have to be willing to put in the work, and it is a lot of work. Fundraising is also going to be a lot of work. You don't have to have it be a ton of work because it's not necessarily you fundraising every penny, but it absolutely can be. So my first question that I ever say to people is, do you have the time to put in the work? Do you have the time to work through issues? Because if not, you're going to end up with a very expensive pet. So things to consider when you're picking a service dog program. I usually talk about the reputation of the program. So talk to any individuals that you know that have service dogs. That's going to be one of the big things. Truly, Domesti-Pups, we spread by word of mouth further than we do any sort of advertising. We do minimal advertising for our service dogs, aside from we work with the Chelsea Hutchinson Foundation, and we go to Epilepsy Awareness Day at Disney is really the only advertising for our seizure response dogs that we do, or seizure alert dogs. But the reputation of the program is going to be a big one. And this can be a good or a bad thing. So there are a lot of people out there that want to make a quick buck off of it. I'm sure you guys have all heard horror stories of people that took somebody's money and they did not get what they had paid for in a service dog. So asking a lot of questions, asking, look at reviews from the program, see how they're doing in order to do that. The other thing is the experience in training. So not that somebody can't just start producing a different type of service dog. They absolutely can. However, I know personally as a parent, I would much rather choose somebody that has been training these dogs for several years versus me getting the first dog that they've ever trained for seizures. So experience and training is a good thing to ask. Health and temperament testing is a deal breaker for me. That is a huge one. I have a friend that is diabetic, and she got a dog from a service dog organization. She paid $18,000 for this diabetic alert dog. It turned out that the dog had bad knees and needed surgery to be able to continue to work. And the program told her that they would not refund her money. And in fact, she had to pay another $12,000 to fix the dog's legs in order for the dog to be able to work. And they did not do any sort of health testing on the dog prior to placing it with them. So for me, health testing is a huge one. You want to make sure that you are getting, to the best of their knowledge, a healthy dog. Now, do things happen? Without a doubt, things happen. Cancer happens. Things like that you can't predict happens. But in general, does the dog have healthy hips? Does the dog have healthy eyes? Does the dog have health testing in its family lineage to say, are they prone to all these golden retriever diseases if it's a golden, or vice versa? So you want to make sure that there is health testing on the dog to make sure that, they're not going to suffer from a common ailment of the breed. Cost. Cost is going to be a huge question for a lot of you. My biggest piece of advice is don't let the cost be the determining factor of getting the dog. It is a lot of money. I will tell you, our seizure response dogs are $28,000, seizure response, seizure alert. And that is a lot of money. It is a lot of money. However, there are things out there that can help. There are programs that will do grants associated with that. We will help with fundraising ideas. We don't ever want the cost to be the reason that somebody doesn't get a service dog, because there are ways to get there and there are ways to help, and we're happy to do that. In my time with the program, we have never had an individual not be able to raise the funds for their dog. Some just require a little bit more work than others. So cost, and the reason I put it on there is, yes, it should not be a determining factor. The other reason I put it on there is cheaper doesn't always mean better. If you're getting a service dog for $5,000 from somebody, chances are you are not getting a quality dog, because most reputable organizations are charging about the same price for their service dogs. And again, there's some variance between areas that you live in, some of those things, but in general, the cost is going to be high on them because the cost involved in the dog. And I'm happy to break down some of that a little bit here for you. So typically, when you look at anybody that has a pet out there, when you look at raising your dog from 8 weeks old to, let's say, 2 years old, you have the purchase of the dog, anywhere from what, $500 to plus $2,000, depends on the dog. You have all your vet costs in that first 2 years of life. Spay, neuter, all of that stuff, that's going to add on another couple $1,000s. Then you have all of the specific health testing that we do. I will tell you, we utilize the pen hip evaluation, and that does cost our program $500 per dog to have that evaluation done. So as we do this, when we haven't even started the dog's formal training, and we're usually anywhere between $3,000 and $4,000 into a dog, and we have not even started their formal service dog training yet. So that is why these dogs are so expensive. That doesn't include any training costs. It doesn't include anything else. It's just general cost of owning the dog and taking care of the dog. The other thing is you want to make sure you have a program that is going to follow up, and again, preferably at no cost. Any of the dogs that were placed in our program for the lifetime of the dog, they can call me up and say, hey, I am having this issue, and I'm going to help them. This last month, we actually had 2 service dogs come back to us for a short retraining for about a month. And that was at no cost to the owner, aside from the cost of getting the dog to us. We are forever with the life of the dog. The only exception with our program is the only time we would ever charge somebody for follow-up training is if you failed to maintain any sort of training for 2 years of the dog's life and now you want it to start working again. Yeah, we're going to have to retrain your dog, and there's going to be some cost involved in that. But otherwise, we follow up for the lifetime of the dog. You can call me at any point in time, and I am happy to say, hey, try XYZ, and we are willing to help and do that. So we help troubleshoot issues at any point in time for the lifetime of the dog. And it's what a reputable organization should do. The other thing is, I want to talk about this, and please don't take it when I say honesty as in people are dishonest. When you fill out an application for a service dog for an organization, you need to be as honest and genuine about the person needing the dog as you possibly can be. We had a situation that a young girl used to be a marathon runner. She was fantastic. And what the family failed to tell us is that she was a runner prior to getting her service dog and prior to her epilepsy. So we placed a high energy dog with her to find out that she truly was not a runner. So it wasn't a good fit, but it wasn't a good fit not because we didn't do our due diligence. It wasn't a good fit because they were looking at what they hoped she would go back into and not where she currently was in life. So you want to make sure that you are very honest and open with them. Getting a service dog is very much a partnership between that program and you. I'm going to ask you all the details about yourself. I'm going to ask you all the difficult questions. I want to know every nitty-gritty detail about seizures. I want to know your daily life. And it's because I want to make sure that, again, I am placing the right dog with you, not just a dog with you. So being a true, genuine self of where things are at and where you hope to be is always a good thing. But I really want to know, how does it look right now? A common issue with this is children. So I am a parent. I am very fortunate in the fact that my children do not have epilepsy. But as a parent, I want to see a raise of hands. How many of you think you have the best child in this world and your child is capable of everything? We all do, right? So, and what I mean by that, sometimes it's really hard to take a step back to say, maybe they can't do this. With service dogs, there's something called an independent service dog and a dependent service dog. And we always ask that as an organization. For us, we will place a dog with a child as young as 5 years old to work independently with the dog. But the other thing is the child has to be able to physically manage the dog. And again, as Christine and Delia could tell you, it's a lot of work. That child has to feed the dog and let the dog out and do the training and do all of that stuff. It can't be mom and dad. it has to be, it has to be the child, because we want that dog to bond really closely with that one person. So that's where being a true honest self, we've had several people that through our conversations, we say, is your child ready for this responsibility? And we've had several families that said, maybe we wait a year. Maybe waiting a year is a better idea because they already have their hands full with what's going on. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about what is a seizure alert dog versus what a seizure response dog is. So Domesti-Pups predominantly trains seizure response dogs. If an organization is guaranteeing you a seizure alert dog, you want to question it. So we'll break it down a little bit. A seizure response dog is a dog that uses scent to alert prior to a seizure, and it's not possible for every type of seizure or every seizure with that person. So in order for a seizure alert dog to do their job, there must be a chemical change that happens within the individual's body prior to the onset of the seizure. So if you had an EEG, usually there are spikes in the brain that happen prior to the onset of the seizure in order for alerting to happen. There are some individuals that have that happen 5 seconds before their seizure. 5 seconds is not enough time for a dog to be able to alert to that to happen. So seizure alert is never anything that is guaranteed. We have several of our dogs that were placed that do alert, but seizure alert is never guaranteed because you can't guarantee it with every single seizure out there. So our predominant focus is seizure response. Now, what does that look like? We train the dog based on the seizures and based on the individual's needs to respond to that. So, few examples of what our dogs can do. They can actually roll an individual over on their side into a recovery position during a seizure. So we have designed a training method where the dogs physically roll the people over and hold them there until they are done having a seizure. The dogs can retrieve emergency medications, water, you name it. They can retrieve whatever medication, VNS magnet. We teach them to retrieve each of those individual items. The dog can go ring a bell and alert a family member that says, hey, you need to come in here. Something is going on. They also have these emergency alarm phones that the dog can activate to call an emergency to call like EMS if somebody lives alone. So that is the predominant thing that a seizure response do. They are going to follow something up after the seizure happens, and it's usually always after that. Now, again, some dogs naturally alert on their own. If we get scent samples from a person, we are absolutely going to utilize those scent samples to help teach the dogs in that regard. Does anybody have any questions? I can open up some of this, or Christine, if you want to filter through a few, or however that works, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, we have a couple, and I think there was a great question from Manon. She had said, and I kind of answered it, but I would love to get your also your thought on it. She says, my son's seizure is somewhat controlled by medicines, but he has aura seizures a few times a day, meaning that his foot seizes for a second or two. When he walks, that happens, that makes him trip and sometimes fall. Would a service dog be appropriate for him? And I had responded and I had said, it is a great question. I know that many service dogs are also trained in mobility assist that will help this with the stability, and walking is definitely something that can be trained to do. And I said I would defer to you for more on that topic.
So absolutely. There are quite a few people that have that happen with the seizure. So what we would do is truly the dog's predominant task would be more balanced mobility work than it would be seizure work. Anytime any individual has a seizure, we still teach the dog those seizure response, because if there is a breakthrough seizure, we want them to be able to do that. So you would get what's called a dual trained dog, where it also helps that balance mobility. Now, if he is fully falling, can the dog prevent that? No. But if it's just a trip and he needs to grab something to stabilize himself, without a doubt, that is something that they could find helpful. Great question.
And there's another one too, which we get a lot of questions about too. So let's say that the child or the young adult is not able to be the sole handler for the dog. Do you guys ever train, or do you know about training like as a team, where maybe a parent or someone else is trained alongside that person that has epilepsy? So that way, if that person cannot be the sole handler for that dog?
That is also a fantastic question. So those dogs are what we call dependent service dogs, and that would be where a parent or a guardian or caregiver is the predominant handler of that dog. And under ADA law, that still applies. Now, the difference with that is, let's say that parent, guardian, handler is running to the store by themselves and that individual is not with them. No, you cannot take the dog in public by yourself, because in order for that dog to be classified as a service dog, it needs to be with the individual that has a disability. The other problem with those types of dogs, they do very well in a lot of regards, is school. Schools get a little tricky and hairy in that situation because public schools are not required to provide somebody to handle the dog. So typically in our situations with dependent service dogs, those dogs do not accompany the children to school if they go to a public school, because again, the school does not have to provide somebody to handle and manage the dog. It is not required on their part. So it is something where they do that. There's also something that we do, and other organizations do as well, called a skilled companion. We have a family in Omaha, Nebraska that has one of our dogs. We had a dog that wasn't suited for working in public. He was an amazing seizure response dog, but wasn't suited for working in public because it really stressed the dog out. The family has a young man that has a lot of seizures, and truly taking this young man out in public, because he's like 6'7", and it just is a big guy with a lot of mental handicaps in regards to, he's probably about at the age of a 1-year-old child mentally. So the family's like, we have our hands full in public when we take him. We just want a dog that can help in our home. And that's always an option as well. We call them skilled companions. In fact, we have one right now that's available for that. And that's where the dog does service dog tasks within the home, but it is not taken in public. So I hope I answered those questions.
Yeah. And there's another one quickly listed. Are there certain breeds of dogs that are more trainable for epilepsy?
Absolutely. So not necessarily for epilepsy in specific. In the service dog world, there is something called the Fab Four. So the Fab Four refers to the 4 breeds of dogs that are the most successful in service work. And those dogs are going to be the Lab, the Golden Retriever, the Standard Poodle, and the Collie, Rough Coat or Smooth Coat. Those are the 4 breeds that are most successful in service work. Outside of that, you also have other breeds like German Shepherds and things like that. As an organization, we do not use any sort of bully breed or any sort of protective nature breed. The reason being is if somebody falls and has a seizure, a dog that has a natural protective instinct, for example, a shepherd, might want to stand over and prevent that dog from allowing EMS to help that person. And in that situation, the dog is usually going to have some sort of pepper spray or something like that sprayed at it, because the preservation of the life of the person is always the priority. So as an organization, we want those soft, approachable dogs. We also believe in breaking down barriers with our service dogs. So, we want people to approach you. We don't want people to say, oh my gosh, you just had a seizure, I'm going to awkwardly stare at you and walk away. We want to break down those social barriers. And truthfully, it works a little bit too well, because everybody wants to come tell you their dog stories when they see your dog. But yes, so there are breeds that are better. Not that any other breed can't work. I do recommend people, if you are new to doing that, I would want one of what's called the Fab Four or a mix thereof. There's a lot of studies that are done with guide dog organizations that actually the top successful guide dog is actually a cross between a Lab and a Golden Retriever. And we utilize Golden Doodles within our program as well, because they combine some of the traits that we like from each breed.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda.
All right, I see questions on what a scent sample is in here. So I'll approach that really quick. So when an individual has a seizure, most of the time there's a chemical change that occurs within a body. The best sample for being able to train the dog is actually saliva. And a lot of people that have seizures tend to produce a lot of that during a seizure. So that is really the best thing to use. There are times that you can use sweat and some of those things, but there are things that can also contradict that. Like if you use lotions or perfumes or something like that, and you're wiping a forehead, makeup, anything like that, the smells can interchange. So we usually like to do saliva. And again, you can't have recently eaten something. It needs to be kind of a clean saliva scent.
Amanda, before you continue on, Christine Feely has a couple of them, and they're good questions. She says, if a person falls due to a seizure, what type of response would you expect from a service dog? And how long is the waiting list, and where do you get your dogs from?
Absolutely. So question number one is really depends on the individual. If I have an individual that lives alone, my focus is going to be on that dog rolling somebody over on their side and getting them into a recovery position to be able to help them best recover from the seizure. If I have a young child that is always with a parent or guardian, my number one priority is going to be that that dog goes and rings the bell to alert the family and the house that something is going on. So really, truly, the response is geared towards each individual and what their specific needs are to make sure that the dog is going to do that. How long is the wait list? I will tell you, most reputable organizations are going to have anywhere from a 2 to 5 year wait list. Our wait list is currently out to 2025 at the moment. And it depends. Again, we are very much placing the right dog with an individual versus placing a dog. So what that means is sometimes you have to wait a little bit extra. I had a young girl last year that needed a non-shedding breed because they have allergies, and I did not have a non-shedding breed to get her. So she had to wait an additional year for a dog for me to do that. There are also other situations surrounding it. Again, we had a very specific young man that required a very specific dog, and he had to wait 3 years to get his dog that would be right for him. Where do we get our dogs? So we do a little bit of everything. One of our trainers actually breeds dogs for the service dog program. We previously bred for the program. Our director actually retired. The founder of Domesti-Pups retired last year. So myself and a few other people have since taken over the program. So we are not currently breeding as a program, but we do have some breeding males. We also obtain them from breeders. We do occasionally obtain them from shelters, but we tend to stray away from that just because we want to make sure you're getting a dog with a lot of health and longevity. And unfortunately, when you get a dog from a shelter, you don't know their background. And so you don't know the follow-up in that. So we used to do all shelter dogs, but over the years, we found that they weren't as successful as getting and raising them from young puppies. So our focus is getting them as puppies from somewhere. It's just a matter of where they come from. So I guess I can talk a little bit about how the timeline works. We place service dogs, and again, every organization is going to be a little bit different. So when a dog is bred in our program, we actually start training with stuff on the second day of their life, which sounds crazy, but we start with a program called Early Scent Introduction and Early Neurological Stimulation. We also raise them with a program called Puppy Culture. We want our dogs to be dogs with manners and to learn and socialize in their environment prior to a year old. So dogs under 1 year of age in our program are not taught seizure dog skills. They are not taught any advanced obedience. They are not taught any advanced service dog skills. We want our puppies to be puppies. We want them to learn house manners. We want them to do all of those things. Ideally, we would like to start formal training around 18 months of age because a little maturity on the dog is always a good thing. But we definitely don't like to start them prior to a year. We do occasionally, depending on the maturity of the dog. So most of our dogs, when they are being placed, are anywhere between 2 and 3 years of age in an ideal scenario, because we don't like to start that formal training until they're a year old. So as an organization, at any given time, we have 2 to 3 years worth of dogs training at a time in our program, and that looks a little bit different. Some might be itty bitty babies, some might be a year old, some might be informal training and doing that. So training happens all throughout time, and where you fall on that wait list also determines that. So how we do it is we bring you in, we do a very detailed interview. What do your seizures look like? What do you need in a dog? So on and so forth. We put you on our waiting list and we have this detailed information. When it's your year for a dog, I am looking at these dogs every time we do training. And I'm saying, this dog has this skill set. It has this lifestyle. it might be a good fit for this person. And we kind of keep our ideas open for who's going to go to where and go from there. Now, I did say we are a very small organization. Right now, we graduate anywhere between 5 and 7 dogs in a year. Our goal is quality, not quantity. So yes, our wait list is 3 years, but we are also not training 20 dogs a year. I would love to train 20 dogs a year. But right now we are very much a quality versus quantity. We are small. We also do things a little bit different because we do service dog camp. So when you get your dog, if medically able to, you actually get to Nebraska. Once you get to Nebraska, you are with us for 12 days. We cover all the costs of service dog camp. We put you in a hotel, and then we train as a group. You learn training together, you learn training individual with your dog. And then after you've been with your dog for a few days, we start going out in public. We go all the places you would go in your everyday life. We go to Walmart and train. We go to restaurants and movie theaters and anywhere you would go in your daily life. We take you as a group together with you getting your service dog so you can learn together as a group. The other thing is it forms a community. A lot of people, there's one young man and it makes me cry every time, so I apologize if it makes me cry. He's about my age and he came through to get his service dog and he was crying when service dog camp was over and he didn't want to leave and he said, I feel normal here. I am surrounded by people where epilepsy is normal. So if I have a seizure in front of people, it's not a big deal. And he didn't want to leave because with us he was normal. And that's really kind of the harsh reality. So does your wait list start once fundraising is complete? That's a great question. No, we do not expect people to have the money up front to get on our wait list because we understand that takes time. We actually, in fact, used to never require any money down to get on our wait list, and we learned our lesson. We had several people that backed out a month or two before getting a dog, and then we had just spent, 10 months training a dog for them. So what we typically do is we require a deposit of, I believe it's $2,500 to get on the wait list. And that just shows us you are serious. You're ready to do this. You're ready to get there. Now, if you have medical issues or you need to push back for a year, we're not going to take your money and run. That's going to be applied to that next year. And then we typically try to set up monthly payments. But again, as an organization, we work with people because we understand sometimes fundraising is high and sometimes fundraising is low. We just like to see continuous payments made over time. We've had some individuals, and in fact, we had one this last year that they put their deposit down and we had never received any money for them for like 7 months. And when we reached back out, they hadn't even started fundraising and they were supposed to be getting a dog in 4 months. So it's one of those things that we really try to stay on top of it with monthly payments. Again, if it doesn't happen, it's not a big deal. We work with people. Fundraising is really going to be as big of a job as you make it. We've had some individuals that do one fundraiser and raise all of their money. It's not necessarily about who you know, it's who you know, who do they know, and who can they get to participate in things. Usually what we find is most successful is at community events like spaghetti feeds or taco feeds, anything involving food and music. Most of the time you're going to get people to come to it. People like to do free will donations. There's a lot of things like that. And people want to help. You will be surprised at how much people truly want to help. People in your community want to help you. Businesses, other places like that. So fundraising doesn't have to be such a daunting task. There are a lot of companies out there, especially now, that you can do fundraising through t-shirts and you don't have to buy the t-shirts up front. You just contact the company, they set it up and a portion of the proceeds are sent to you every single time a t-shirt is purchased. So all of those things are really helpful and there's a ton of things. I see, should a service dog be the only pet in the house? Nope. You can have, well, reasonably, a service dog, you can have other pets in the home. We have had just about every pet that you can imagine in the home. The only reason we would say that it could not be in a home with other animals is if that dog has any sort of aggression history. The only other exception is if you live alone. There are times where we have had to have individuals look at their current pets to see if it was the best option to get a service dog, because the bond between a service dog and their person is critical in them doing their job. So while no, it's not the only pet in the home, I'm also going to say it is not a pet at all. I never refer to them as a pet because family members don't get to play with a dog. Family members don't get to feed the dog. Family members rarely get to pet the dog. I say once a day, maybe if that. And usually I tell them, even training the dogs in my home, I have children. My children don't get to play with the dogs. I play with the dogs. My children don't get to do a lot of those things. It's only me because we want our dogs to form a strong bond with one individual. And if you have other kiddos in the home or anything else, and the dog is free reign going to everybody else, if you're the person that gives them all the fun and the person having a seizure is sleeping, who do you think the dog's going to want to be with? The dog's going to want to be with the person that gives them the most. So yes, that is probably the hardest piece of having a service dog when you have other family members in the home. And I think, Christine, you could probably talk more on that.
I was just about to comment on that. So Stormy, who is our service dog, not ours, I should say, because I call her that now because she's now retired, but Delia's service dog. Delia, do you want to talk about what it was like for 8 years before Stormy retired?
Hey, she still is.
She's retired now, but for 8 years, could mom and dad and your sister Morgan love on Stormy and play with her? No. So that was the hardest thing. And I used to joke all the time with Michelle and everybody at Domesti. I was like, can you have given her? Because Stormy is this gorgeous white golden retriever, and she's the sweetest and just most beautiful dog.
Smart.
And she's very smart, yeah.
She can outsmart my dad and my mom.
And I used to say all the time, I'm like, could you have given her a one-eyed, three-legged dog? Because then we wouldn't have wanted to love on her so much, because it's so hard to do, because you have to realize that this is not a pet. Stormy's job is to keep Delia safe. And for 8 years, she worked really hard on that.
And then like this, I'll keep saying, dang. Yeah. You know, in the cartoon, they're this.
Yep, exactly. So now that Stormy's retired, it was actually because they were so bonded for so long that it actually was a lot of work for us to get her to kind of realize that she's retired. And how we knew she was retired and when it was time, she told us. So she started to kind of not want to get harnessed or walk away from the harness when it was time to harness up and go outside. Delia. And she would get really tired. So we knew it was time for her to retire and just enjoy being a pet now. So now she's a pet, and we all get
but then she wants to get the harness up. So
yeah. And so now she's a pet in the house, but that is a really hard thing. And that is something that you have to really talk about as a family, and knowing that you have to.
But really we still have our closest bonding.
You guys still do.
Because they always say nothing can break that bond.
That's right.
This is true. Well, and we had I mentioned earlier that we had a dog that we brought back for training. Part of the reason that we brought back this dog for training is the young girl became like deathly ill. It just a part of the medication she was taking, and she has some other things going on with her, to the point where she was sleeping 18 plus hours a day. So mom and dad had to take care of the dog because the child was physically unable to take care of the dog due to her illness. And then what happened is the dog stopped working for the child, because now all of my other people are fun and I don't have to work for you. You just do the fun things for me. You feed me, you do all of those things. So the dog stopped responding to the seizures and stopped doing that. So again, we brought the dog back for some additional retraining to say, hey, no, we need to make sure we're doing what we need to be doing. But yes, all of those are very, very realistic things. And it is very hard. In my own life, when the dogs are walking around the home as I'm training them, my family can pet them. My family can do that as long as the dog is focused on me. When I go out in public, they are not allowed to touch the dog. And I have a less than 2-year-old. So you can imagine that's very difficult for them to do that. But even with ourselves, we're very strict with that, because we want to make sure the dog understands when they're on leash, when they are working with their person, they need to do that. The other thing with a seizure response dog is they're never off duty. A seizure response dog is always working. The difference between a guide dog works outside the home. You put their harness on, they work outside the home. When you get home, that harness comes off and they're off duty. Seizure response dogs, seizure alert dogs don't get that. They always have to be ready to respond to a seizure. So it's a little bit of a different situation where they have to understand all the time, no matter what, I am focused on my person.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda.
All
Those
great
are
questions.
Some really great questions. We have 10 minutes left, and I wanted to give a few minutes to kind of pass it to both Lauren and to Christine Morin, who's joined us today, for them to be able to give a little bit of their own thoughts about Lauren is an adult with a service dog, and then Christine is
Wait, hold on. Who's Christine?
Christine was her family became a puppy raiser for a service dog. So I was thinking we could start with Lauren. Lauren, go ahead and take yourself off mute. We'll go ahead and we will make you the speaker.
Okay.
And Lauren, if you can take yourself off mute and introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hi guys, I'm Lauren Segala. I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 13 years old. Gotta love hormones. And I got a seizure alert dog. But now I'm starting to think that he's more of like a seizure response. In 2016. So everybody, this is Frodo. I'm a teacher. So going to the school is it's crazy. It's great to like teach the students about service animals and having them in the school, but it's also hard, like you said, Amanda, being like, nope, you can't touch them. It's very hard. Sometimes I just go, here, I'll give him some love for you. That way it's them being like, oh, okay, thank you. But yeah, so Frodo's now 9. He just turned 9 on Saturday. And he's been, he's helped me definitely through a lot of seizures. I actually had a seizure last night while he was, I know, seriously, Christine, 6 months. But anyways, on that note, yeah. While he was eating food, I had my seizure on our couch, which is right by where he eats. He stopped, he turned around, he went over to me, he did the whole licking my face to make sure I come out of it, laying right next to me, making sure I'm safe, which is what he does. I got him from a place in Conkrinville, Pennsylvania. And it was fun. The process, sorry, I'm gonna quick this up. I did a online application, and then since I was moving there, I got to do the in-person interview instead of the phone. And since I had moved there, my process sped up. So instead of being on the list for like 2 years, it was really only like 6 months, I'd say, because I was going to graduate classes, and they would bring dogs that were in training, like one each time that I went, so that they could see which type of dog personality matched best with me. So yeah, that's my little journey.
Lauren, if you could give people what is the 2 things? What do you think has been the hardest part about having a service dog, and what has been the most rewarding part of having a service dog?
So rewarding is definitely helping me. He pretty much makes me feel safe. And with epilepsy, as you may know, sometimes we get sad, really sad, depressed, and he just is there to give me love because I know that he'll keep me safe. One of the recent things that I'm mad about is people that are just buying vests online and saying that they have a service, because it makes our life who have a service dog much harder to go on planes and just into public places. So yeah.
Thank you, Lauren, so much. Lauren, are you okay sharing your email address in the chat so that if anybody has questions for you after. And Amanda, you too from Domesti, if you could also put your email address in there just so that after if people have more questions, they can reach out to you directly. I want to now pass the baton to Christine, if she can share a little bit about what it's like being a puppy raiser and being a part of that whole experience. So go ahead, Christine, take yourself off mute.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Christine. Thank you for having me. So my name is Christine Morin. I am actually our youngest son, Henry, has epilepsy, and he is currently waiting for a service dog. We're on the waiting list, just patiently waiting. And my husband and I had decided about a year ago that we wanted to kind of get into the fostering component of it because just my own type of personality, I want to know what we're getting into. I want to, if we can kind of be able to, whether it kind of know the signs, be able to help our son and we have 2 other kiddos as well, just to be able to kind of, as Christine can attest and Lauren can attest, just to kind of all the pressures in society of, the questions that people ask you, the being able to handle, when people are like, oh, can I pet? And you're like, nope, sorry, just almost kind of like practice run is what we took it as. So we had contacted a company, an organization who has a couple places around the United States. I'm currently in Maine. So we had contacted one in New Hampshire, and they, which is
Little
where
Angels, right?
Little Angels. Yes, it was one of those. I'm like, I don't know if I can say. I don't know. I don't know the rules. So yeah, so we were waiting for our service dog through Little Angels. So we had contacted them, and they are always looking for fosters, and they also do something very similar, like Amanda. They also do like a prison program. They have kind of a whole line of things. And we were able to get a service dog. She was 1.5 years, is when we had got her. And we had her for 7 months. It was thus far one of the most rewarding and hardest thing I've probably ever done, shy of watching my child have all the seizures he's had. But it was a very good, we had a lot of support. There was a lot of online, at the time we did more kind of online Zooming. We went outside and met for different outings. If we were having troubles, there was also there's actually a foster group right online, kind of able to just see each other's adventures, ask questions. It was just it helped kind of ease us into knowing that it's going to be still extremely challenging. Like many of you have said, where I'm not the one getting the service dog, but it will be our family and our home. So it's been a very great experience. The dog that we actually had for 7 months, she only like 3 weeks ago actually just graduated. So that was really kind of cool to see. And we were able to meet up with her this past summer just to kind of say our goodbyes and things like that, and wish her farewell. But it was a really good experience. I would recommend if you have the time, and it is certainly from the foster point of view, at least, because I'm not a true trainer like Amanda and others that have gone through it all. If you have any type of like, ooh, I don't know how it's going to go, or if it's something, at least I looked at it as something that would help us to be able to just put ourselves at ease a little bit. It was a wonderful experience, and they have longer fosters, short foster. They've kind of all different time frames that you can experience it, because they very much are also looking for just exposing the dogs to different things. And we were, and Amanda talked about this a little bit, how some of the dogs, you hit it right on the spot, Amanda, how, you have a dog for 1.5 years, and then, the medical reason of hip dysplasia. And actually we were fortunate enough fortunate or unfortunate, but the dog that we fostered, her sister ended up having hip dysplasia, and we ended up adopting her just as our own pet. But it was like a wonderful, but like, oh no, that's another dog that didn't make it through the program. It's just all these different different things, but it really has been a wonderful experience. We're currently kind of waiting on the call that we can now, we're going to foster again and do a puppy that 4 or 5 months old by the time it kind of gets to us. So we're just kind of patiently waiting for that, but it's been a really wonderful experience.
I too have adopted a dog that failed out of the program. His career changed for behavioral issues, but it was the best thing that I could have done for. I actually puppy raised this dog as well, and so puppy raisers were given first right for adoption, and he lives his spoiled best life here. But he was not a good service dog candidate. Love him to death, not a great service dog candidate.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Amanda from Domesti-Pups. I know that there's a lot of more questions coming in. So what we will do is I will send an email after to everybody that was on this Zoom webinar with us and share those contact information of those that have been with us tonight. Again, I want to say thank you so much to Amanda, to Christine, and to Lauren for hopping on and just kind of sharing some of their information. I'm so appreciative to everybody being here. I really hope that everybody got something from tonight. Don't forget our other Wednesday webinars. We have every Wednesday, we're having some type of educational webinar. So go to our events page at epilepsynewengland.org/events. And go ahead and take a look at that as well and see what other webinars we'll be having. And we will be recording each of our webinars. So if you can't make it, we'll make sure that you do get a recording of that. So thank you so much for everybody.
Christine, hold on.
Yeah,
Next week on the third, for whatever reason, I think provider availability, the Wednesday webinar is actually on Tuesday. And that information's on Facebook. And then Wednesday, instead of at 7, it's in the afternoon and on emergency meds. So next week's only our second week, but already a little off schedule. So check the website about CBD and emergency meds.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And you guys have a great night.